While we're being told that our economy is doing great, the European economy is doing great, we know for a fact that it's not. Many of us have friends who are out of work and can't find work or are struggling to find work. Some of you guys are struggling to find work right now too, and that's not exactly how a great economy is supposed to work. But there's a secret that isn't often told. It's that everything in the economy is about energy. If you think about it, food is energy that people eat. Any product that you buy from a store is produced using energy and transported using energy. And the labor that goes into it is funded by the food that those people eat, which is stuff that energy produced as well. And so really when we get down to it, the entire economy really is based upon ready, available, and affordable energy. And when we see the policies of these governments going into effect, and including the bad policies of the United States government, we have been set up for collapse. We're going to walk you through a little bit more in-depth about that, the technicalities. We're going to look at some of the energy systems that are under attack, that are being banned. We're going to be talking about how energy supplies are becoming less readily available, how that's going to impact availability of goods, how it's going to impact the availability of jobs, how it's going to impact the availability of loans and interest rates. And we're going to just kind of give you a walk through what's going to happen next, because you need to be making smart choices today about what happens tomorrow. All right, so let's start off with Europe here. Europe is a perfect example of people who have grown too arrogant to understand the basics of their own economies. They don't realize how fundamental energy is to their entire economy, and so they pretend like they can just buy their way out of an energy crisis. By and large, Europe doesn't produce enough energy. Now, Norway is kind of the example, the exception there. They produce a lot of energy, but they don't produce enough energy to offset the rest of Europe. So what we have is Europe, who has to import natural gas, has to import uranium, has to import things like coal, has to import things like natural gas. They need these energy inputs, including crude oil. They need this stuff coming in. If you were to cut off the energy going into Europe, the whole society would collapse. Now, you can cut off other things, and the society won't collapse, right? People can figure some things out, but oil doesn't just sprout out of the ground anymore, right? You have to go searching for that. It takes a long time to explore, find these energy resources, and then to exploit them requires billion-dollar projects, massive amounts of time, energy, and personnel, labor to get that energy extracted safely from the ground. We've seen over in Europe, they have this war on fossil fuels. They're against oil, which their society depends on. You know, the people that driving to the protests in a fossil fuel powered vehicle. And maybe they get into an electric vehicle, but the funny thing is that the amount of oil that it takes to make an electric vehicle and to run that electric vehicle is oftentimes more fossil fuels get used there than to make and run gas-powered cars. It's irony, but the amount of energy it takes to process those batteries, to mine the batteries, it's actually just more carbon neutral to just use a regular vehicle with gas. Anyway, that's a whole different topic. But they are basically just committing societal collapse because of their bad choices. You can't escape gravity. I don't care if you put your Superman suit on. If you jump off that building, you're going to hit the ground. And you're going to hit it hard because that's how gravity works. And the same way, if you make it so that your society, your country, your area is going to be running out of energy, your economy will collapse. That's not an if, that's not a caveat, there's no asterisks on that. If you cut the energy imports into your society, you collapse. That's just how it works. To give you an idea of where we are globally, the world crude oil supply is again dropping. Now, we never fully recovered from the cough pandemic. We were producing energy of approximately 0.46 barrels of oil per person, gallons per person per day of oil. That's world population. We're now at 0.42. Now that may not sound like a lot, but the simple fact is that we are lowering the amount of oil available energy-wise per person per day worldwide. So that means somebody's got to use less oil. Somebody's got to use less energy. Is it going to be you? You're going to drive less? Are you going to use less products? Going to use less services? Are you going to sit at home and, in the dark? I don't think you probably want to do that. We all want to have energy. We want to have our dishwashers working. Not that I have a dishwasher. It's like a scrubby brush. That's my dishwasher and my hands. But we want to have energy, so we have ready availability to products, to food, to all sorts of things. And the fact is that we don't have as much energy being produced as we did before. This is classic recession. You can just see that the inputs into society and of energy and the amount of goods produced is just less. People can't afford the things. Now, this isn't necessarily because energy is so expensive. In fact, ironically, it's because energy is maybe a little too cheap. It's so cheap that companies aren't doing the exploration, they aren't building new projects, and so there's just less oil coming out of the ground. You have government policies like over in Europe and the United States that have for the last few years been very anti-oil. You had the Keystone Pipeline shut down by the sleeper, the sleeping agent. That made investment into Canadian oil projects up north less attractive. Less investment was made. Now, the Canadians built their own pipeline to go around the United States, and so that was a great win for the United States there. Thanks, administration. We could have had that oil coming down to American refineries for cheap, but instead, it's going to be heading over to China and Asian markets. And the United States is going to have to pay more for our gasoline and diesel and jet fuel. It's going to be more expensive because we don't have that pipeline. And we're going to have less energy worldwide. This is a lose-lose for just about everybody except for the environmentalist wackos who feel like they won some kind of victory or something. They get to send out their newsletters and talk about how wonderful and how amazing their virtues are and virtue signal in all sorts of different ways. But we've seen the war on coal. We've talked about that before. Coal just being blocked almost worldwide. Very few places are still willing to import coal, and very few companies are still willing to mine coal because they're the bad guys, according to these greenie weenies. Coal. We got oil dropping in production worldwide. We have, in addition to that, we have natural gas. Now, natural gas in general is not being attacked, but the simple fact is that we got a lot of natural gas coming out of Russia that can't move down into Europe. Now, the idea is that we're going to hurt Russia doing this. Of course, we waited until they built their pipeline, their natural gas pipeline, to China. So they're just going to take that gas, shove it in the pipeline, and send it to China. Now, China's going to get cheaper energy. Europe's going to get much more expensive energy. So I don't know how that's a win for us. I mean, China going to have a lot cheaper energy, a lot more energy self-sufficient or reliable sources. I mean, it's very difficult to get at those pipelines that are in Central Asia. Our aircraft are going to have a hard time getting that deep into enemy airspace to attack those pipelines. China just is opening up a series of pump stations and pipelines that are going to get it off of its need for fuel and natural gas coming in through its ports, where it's relatively easy to attack, and they're going to be getting through pipelines from Russia. They're going to be getting oil, they're going to be getting natural gas, and they're going to be getting coal. So that's a lose, lose, lose for us. Energy supplies around the world. We have our enemies, we have our adversaries who are figuring out their energy problems. Iran is now producing more oil and pumping it north through pipelines into Russia. We got Russia pumping oil now into China, getting it directly to those markets. And China is going to be able to pump that down, send that down into Pakistan and to India, possibly too. So we have energy is becoming harder for the Western countries to access and less of it, but our adversaries are finding it easier, and they're sorting out their supply chains and they're sorting out their messes, making it more efficient. This is setting us up for collapse because we're going to have countries cutting us off. A lot of our gas and oil come from countries that do not like us. Now, the United States is blessed with ample opportunities to produce our own oil, produce our own natural gas. But the government of the United States has been waging war on energy companies. Hopefully that's going to start turning around here, but these companies are going to be a little gun shy. Why? Because, okay, Trump's in the presidency right now, but who's going to be next? It's hard to make investments, billion-dollar investments, into something that may only work for the next 4 years. And it may take 2 years to build those facilities. If you're talking about refineries, that can take 10 to 15 years to build a refinery. We haven't had any refineries built in the last 30 years. We've had refineries get transformed into green biodiesel refineries, so oil to bio stuff, more green-friendly stuff. So we have refineries shutting down. We don't have refineries being built because the EPA and all the other green movements out there won't allow any refineries to be built, period. Just can't happen. I've talked about how we're not producing enough gasoline, we're not producing enough diesel, we're not producing enough jet fuel inside the United States. If we have any kind of major disruption for any length of time, it's going to seriously impact the availability of those fuels. That's a big deal. We're just not producing enough. Our gasoline reserves continue to slowly drop here in the United States. Our diesel reserves are slowly dropping. We're not producing enough. And these have been in good times. If we have massive refineries go offline due to power outages in the coming days, that's going to be a crisis like we haven't seen in a long time. If we don't have gasoline and diesel for the repair trucks to get out to fix power lines, it starts to become a loop. If we don't have the power to produce the gasoline and diesel, and we don't have the gasoline and diesel to produce the power, we start having a real problem. And this is a potential, what people call SHTF, stuff hitting the fan. We got interest rates out there that are creeping up. We have the Federal Reserve trying to bring interest rates down, and interest rates are instead going up. This is a scary moment where we're seeing the Federal Reserve has lost control of interest rates. They're pretending like they haven't yet, but the massive deficit spending by the federal government in the United States, as well as state and local governments, as well as the corporations inside the United States, we have been on a spending binge. We have been spending the next 2 or 3 generations worth of wealth. And the bill's coming due. Nobody's going to want to loan governments any more money, or if they do, they're going to want to charge a much higher interest rate. That will collapse the United States government. That will collapse other countries' governments. People have been pretending like gravity doesn't exist. And if you jump from a tall enough building, it may feel like you're flying for a bit, but you're going to come smack dab face first into reality, and it ain't going to be pleasant for you or the people that are going to have to scrape you up. Know what I'm saying? Our economy, European economies, Western economies that are debt-based, deficit spending, free-for-alls, these are not sustainable, and these are not going to work out and end well. There are going to be people who lose everything. And right now, banks are buying up the government bonds. We got rich people buying up the government bonds. I hope the U.S. government just flat out defaults on these things. Maybe make it so that any individual up to $10,000 worth of government bonds are going to be covered and still paid. But beyond that, if anyone has over $10,000 worth of bonds, whether they be a corporation, a bank, whether they be Bill Gates, they don't get anything above that $10,000. Just nothing. They risked and invested in a government that should not have been invested in. They loan money to a government. At some point, the investors own that. They took the risk, and they should be punished, financially punished for terrible investing. And yeah, that might collapse a whole bunch of banks. That is what it is. All right, friends, the collapse is coming, and it is here. We're seeing the early stages of it happening right now, and it could rapidly move forward. It's painful now. It's going to be a lot more painful in the future. Energy, food, finances, being able to get money by working. These are things you need to be focusing on because hard times are coming. And hopefully we'll all make it through it together. All right, friends, I'm warning you. Be thinking about that. Think about what you can do to get more secure. That's one of the reasons why I like precious metals is because silver is really a store of energy. It took energy to produce this. And if you can't hold it, you don't really own it, right? I recommend stocking up on precious metals. A lot of people keep asking me, where do I get mine? Honestly, I get mine from Walmart.com. Look for a reputable dealer on the Walmart.com website, but then you can use a credit card. If you're more okay with just writing a check, you can go to places like AppMex. They have a website, SD Bullion. Just look for one of the reputable dealers. There's a bunch of them out there. Just make sure that you're not, buying from some fly-by-night. Look for specials. Look for deals. And when you see them, and just look for coins and look for not fancy stuff, but look for like rounds. Look for bars. Look for things that are as low price over spot. That's what you're looking for. The spot price moves up and down. You want to be as low over spot as possible when you buy. right? Because you want to invest in precious metals, not in the collectability of whatever you're buying, right? If you're into that, cool. If you understand that, cool. But for those who are getting involved in it, if you want to get silver, get the lowest price silver that from a reputable dealer that you can. If you want to get gold, get the lowest priced gold over spot as well. That's just some basic advice there. All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. If you want to get some more, check out another video from this channel, there's one right up there. I'll see you over there, or I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Steve Poplar.